Wildfires out of nowhere, hurricane destroying all islands. Wake up, America. New world coming in. I don't think I make the cut. What team you playing for? I don't know what team is us. Rage from the body wars. Why you think they beating us? You break the whole game down. The only team is really us. Rage. Game time, I'm talking 4 quarters, right? And I ain't made it to halftime, but I'm approaching lighters because the color of my skin is like a poltergeist. The referees never think twice before they roll the dice. Hey, visions of my afterlife got my mind set to give you chapters of my present still after Christ. Before the Holy Ghost release my soul out this vessel, I'm an ex-God to turn me up a level. Let's get at it. Bishop Neutral, come to spread the truth. My whole life's been a lie. I've been forced by the truth. No, and I ain't never gonna fight for your right, dog. It's all a bunch of hype. They still get the niggas right. My whole life, prison ain't the place you want to live your life when death's around the corner, peeking back like the Antichrist. You must prepare yourself. What's coming is the dark life. A hurricane that's won't refuse. Lord knows the sacrifice. New world coming in. I don't think I make the cut. What team you playing for? I don't know what team is us. Rage from the body wars. Why you think they beating us? You break the whole game down. The only team is really us. New world coming in. I don't think I make the cut. What team you playing for? I don't know what team is us. Rage from the body wars. Why you think they beating us? You break the whole game down. The only team is really us. A man made this lyrical typhoon to keep your mind spinning like the light from the sun moon. I don't need a press or TMZ to cover me. You the controversy you created from the beats. You the blame and the shame for the least. A financial agreement you obtain from the beast. Put a mark on your target like a fame on the leash. Then you suck a nigga dry. Watch the pain start to increase till he come back begging to the shame for relief. To a much bigger price. Now this fame gonna increase. It's a lane for the strength and a lane for the blue. When it's no in between, it's so gonna leave there. And I don't really know the names of the creeps. What the demons chasing me got blood stains on their teeth. So I run through the sand like a hot summer beach. Little indie boat come and stand like on my feet. I look to the sky for answers, tell me why. Just your brain, connect your thoughts.
Hey girl.
Tunnel vision is the key when you analyze. Never have a clean state, just keep it sanitized. New world coming in. I don't think I make the cut. What team you playing for? I don't know what team is us. Rage from the body wars. Why you think they beating us? You break the whole game down. The only team is really us. New world coming in.
Not right now, I'm busy.
What team you playing for? I don't know what team is us. Rage from the body wars. Why you think they beating us? You break the whole game down. The only team is really us.
Come on in, hit the light, and get settled. Because this is going to take a while. Settle. Because this is going to take a while. Let me ride for a little bit. Take a little pressure off of a little bit. Tell me, can you handle this guy? Cloud nine smoke from the cannabis. Picking off from the daily pleasure. Trying to mix it in the cup, but it don't match. Life's good to me, but it's no pleasure. Baby, let me sit with the gods and bring it down on the world like a rock chain. I'm getting set up, y'all. Just come on in. Get in your designated cubbies. Make sure you got your snacks and your snuggies. And hit the like button before you get settled. And we'll begin shortly. Leonard, Remy, Cam Brown.
Place me in the league with the great ones. First style nigga only had to make another one. To the stretches of my life, you can take from. I'm trying to make the whole world like a mix. I spit it. Ride with me, nigga, you can ride with me, nigga, don't slide on me, nigga, show pride with me, nigga, all lies on me, nigga, no lie from me, nigga, why when you have a dance like that? We all need bitches, but the fact be different, no way, if you want mad. But if you got a plan, listen to the different and the difference from that, you a diplomat. Meet me in the kitchen like Steve Bird, early bird, all night, it's no stage words. These change niggas, but they can't change lyrics. Change around, nigga, if you keep staying heard. These are all facts you should take from me. Life situations, face you escape from me.
Okay, Ram.
Nigga can't take the smell, this fake come. Baby, it's a blank when it busts off. Trying to walk the light snakes in the must off. To the depths of the deep, I can touch y'all. To the rise of the gods with it.
Now you know I am not acknowledging that.
We moving on with this white coat. Just like the way I feel white smoke. Another mother brother, he was white though. I didn't give a fuck about our race shit. All races race, still on this snake.
Somebody on the backup channel, I'm gonna throw the link to the main channel in there.
How you gonna move and wanna pass the shore? Y'all niggas tell me what your open eyes. Close mind niggas be no eyes. In the sheet file cause it's open lines. While the wars wait patiently for this time. Niggas think we living in the 8 days. Well, it's never no house where you ain't slave. We all sell out, still we can't slave. Like we stuck in the class, it was ACs. We living out a different script. I'm so genuine, saying I'm
No, not.
like a Muslim Timberland and Missy
We
shit.
being serious today.
When the windows sit. Mama told me, son, you're a shining star. I wasn't seeing the same light when the time was hard. If a dealer rolled the flush when he dealt my cards, all I get to see in life did achieve the odds. The necessary living, it never equals up on summing up the dividend. We all see it like the house shit appears. The television's off, we the internet. Let me cut you out five for your interject. Niggas still waiting on these stimmy checks. 40 niggas in the mirror, let me give me less. Only speaking truth on this new way. Throw a nigga knees, living in the new days. Before they push the hole to the new grave. Trying to feed the knowledge to the new age. Since the pandemic, we the projects. I'ma set that there, let it process. But y'all keep living for this nonsense. I'ma get that there, call the content. We all need peace, rich folks. You niggas outside, you just rich broke. Yeah.
Punishment. All men tremble at punishment. Remember that you are likened to them.
Y'all got a red dot on his head staring out the window, y'all. He ain't never getting out.
Punishes or kills
The sands of time about ran out in his damn thing. In his hourglass.
after death.
Chapter 10 is called punishment. No filter, no embellishments. Nobody's immune to the storm. King with a crown full of thorns. Living to the damn reborn. To judgment day. Any way that he goes. Y'all gotta see that some less. And the actions that we take are not just circumstantial. Weight on my shoulders, bearing down like an anvil, but that's just a sample. Talk to him.
He who inflicts pain on innocent and harmless persons will soon come to one of these 10 states. He will have cruel suffering, loss,
They gon' have to pay the cost.
injury of the body,
So sick you might need an IV.
heavy affliction,
Heavy affliction, listen.
or loss of mind,
They lost their mind.
or misfortune,
Seen it out so many times, but what's the next I'm waiting?
fearful accusation,
Shine.
loss of relation,
Nice for the rainy weather.
or destruction of treasures.
Yeah. And it all comes with a price. You wrong when you do right. Not going to take flight. Read like you gain sight. That's right. And it all comes with a price. You wrong when you do right. Not going to take flight. Read like you gain sight. Up to the people.
Is there in this world any man so restrained by humility that he does not mind reproof as a well-trained horse the whip? Like a well-trained horse, when touched by the whip, he active and lively, you will overcome this great pain of reproof.
Yeah, it's hard trying to put that pride aside. Yeah, it's not easy, but it's all good. What's right. And that's the formula. Never forget that. Come one step closer. This for the culture. Words from the script to the hi-hat. Words for the purpose. I like that, like that, like that. This for the time. This for the time. The pride got too much. He couldn't even take the punishment. All this drama and such and such. Yeah, it was hard to admit. It's hard to admit, but it's somewhat needed. It's hard to expand the minds of the conceited. It's hard to expand the minds of the believe. And it all comes with a price. You draw me, you do right. Not doing it, take flight. Read like you can't say. That's right. And it all comes with a price. You draw me, you do right. Not doing it, take flight. Read like you can't say. That's right.
Lawmakers lead the water wherever they like. Carpenters bend while the wood. Good people fashion themselves.
Yeah. Right out.
Hey, people. Okay, so we're gonna get started. We're doing a look back at Peppermint Patty. Tasha, who the hell is Peppermint Patty? Malachi Z. So this is a closed circle conversation from, hey, Yemi, December 2017. Why does everything seem to happen at the end of the year? But I had Farouk on and Malik. So this is the discussion between what's bound by the agency called the Zulu Nation and Islam and Europe and shit. So yeah.
Just like you said, his mama named him Dwight. Now, a little bit of back.
Muhammad was the son of Elijah Muhammad. He's the one that left the teaching of the Bible. And then he left that to come to.
Hey, Maximum Nicole.
That's just the whole thing of technicalities, beliefs, and stuff like that. But he made pamphlets that would first area, and so it was like the jig is up. When
Michael,
that book,
please.
It was all she wrote.
Okay. If y'all got questions, send them to the email. Lordy. Okay, Farouk, you still there? Oh, there you go. You might mute it though.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Can you hear me now? All right. I'm going to pick up where Malik touched on a lot of issues. He went pretty quickly and thoroughly to this man called Dr. York by some. Dwight York. Just like you said, his mama named him Dwight. I call him Dwight. Now, a little bit of back information is needed on
Maximum, that channel going to be going
to go through that piece by piece, addressing his community when he claimed Islam. Now, when we do this, we got to understand, when York claimed to be Muslim, claimed Islam, this is, I would say, up to about 1993. Then he morphed onto something else. So the books in which I'm going to deal with are those previous books which York put out, claiming to be Muslim, claiming Islam, claiming to be a savior, claiming this and that. One of those books is like this one. You can see it very well. This is a Nubian Islamic Hebrew and Saudullah community book. This is a true story of Noah right here, right? And one of the ways you can tell some of York's older books, they begin from the right side, right? So they read sort of like Arabic books do, meaning they read from the right to the left. So his books and his publications, the early ones, read from right to left, though they were in English.
Well, let me pause this.
And that's
one. Maximum, his people are trying to, some of the people that followed him are trying to kind of take over per se, and they doing it under the guise of free Malachi Z York, because this man is like 1 foot in the grave and the other on the banana peel.
I have several of them up here. His Arabic books, Societies Unmasked, where and what is hell, right? And you can, even from York's books, you can tell how things begin to change. And I'll go into that change in a few minutes. For example, this is the book of Leviathan. Now, this book is printed from left to right versus right to left from an older book, right? And you'll notice how they use the English alphabet. It's all in English. There is some Arabic in here. All right. Well, let's go into the man, Dr. York, Dwight York. We have to understand that Dwight York was a troubled youth, right? He was a very troubled youth. From the time he reached his teenage years, he was caught up into a lot of gang activity, just being a wild and really young person, you know. I will say that Dwight York also got a rape charge in the mid to late 60s, statutory rape charge. Now, this is also a point that needs to be remembered because later on, his character re-emerges again as he develops his community, his cult. Dr. York is also arrested for possession of a firearm, or what is called a zip gun. A zip gun. Those you may not be familiar with what a zip gun is. A zip gun
Family,
is
can we get a few more likes, please, and thank you, so we can get this out.
Basically, you take a steel barrel, a spring, a nail, put a bullet in there with a trigger. It's basically a gun that you make, homemade, and you just simply use it, fire it like any other gun. Well, he was caught with that gun and arrested, and that too shows up in his criminal history, right? Well, these charges right here, York did some time in prison. And then he got out. I would say around the late 60s, early 70s, York gets out of prison. Now, when he gets out of prison, this is when he now synthesizes his hustling, pimping, and Islam. He has a new hustle now. And now his new hustle is religion, in particular, Islam. Now, the beginnings of his community is sort of vague. There isn't much documentation that's still left other than the words of York written in his own publications, which a lot of times is difficult to take because he likes to inflate a lot of things about himself. But we do know from what we do have that his earliest works began in the early 70s, as he says, under a man by the name of Sheikh Daoud. Now, Sheikh Daoud is a very important person in Islam, in America, because it is Sheikh Daoud who is doing a lot of work in the Northeast as far as going out, propagating Islam, and carrying it out to different people. Now, York goes to this man, Sheikh Daoud, and studies under him for a little bit, gains some certificates, and then later uses these certificates to bolster himself, as if he's this learned person.
Well, that was for Yahweh bin Yahweh.
Information and that information.
Maximum.
Not knowing, and the Wahabists will.
Yeah, Khalil Amani testified against Yahweh bin Yahweh, and he wasn't the only one to testify. This is Malachi Z York we're talking about today.
The Wahabists will show you in
Dwight, as his mama named him.
Sheikh Daoud gave York certificates, right? But the thing is, these certificates were given out to anyone in the community, and various people have them still to this day. Still to this day. As a matter of fact, you can read about the same certificate completion of 3-week study course by Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in his biography. He mentions it.
Ain't no problem, Maximum.
Like I say, Sheikh Daoud was known throughout the Northeast.
It probably threw you off because
New
you
York,
see, well, no,
Philadelphia,
this one ain't it. His name
Pittsburgh.
ain't in this one.
He was a very influential person. Now, York at this time is sitting under the man, but the man, Sheikh Dawood himself, is not knowing that this man or this character, nor his background, is actually sitting underneath him, a sheep in wolf's clothing. And York will show this side of himself with other people as well. All right, so we have Sheikh Dawood. All right. To find my material that I have here on Sheikh Dawood. For those that may not know what Sheikh Dawood looks like, I'll bring it up from a picture that I have here.
I wouldn't say they was in cahoots, maximum, more like contemporaries. In a couple, hold on, let me pause this. Because you putting the cart before the horse, but we don't care. Hey Shabo. So if y'all have any questions, you can jump up here and ask. Probably Remy. But they were contemporaries, but none of them really liked each other because it's like they mad territorial. But one of these, they was talking about it. I had one where Khalil, Amani, and Chuck Morgan was on here, and they was talking about how when they went down to DC, the Yahweh Ben Yahweh called trying to run them off.
1851, and he lived to.
So no, they didn't. You know, they didn't get along per se.
Now I need the audience to keep up with these dates, because a lot of things happen within York's community upon the death of this man, Sheikh Dawood, which I'm going to try to touch on, which I am going to touch on today.
Check out.
All right. Here we are. There it is. You see the camera can get that very well. Well, that's a picture of Sheikh Dawood, Sheikh Ahmed Faisal Dawood, Dawood Ahmed Faisal. All right, man from Trinidad, a man from Trinidad, all right, very, very influential. Now, while sitting underneath Sheikh Dawood, York's teaching as far as Islam goes, as far as the theology and what York is teaching, isn't much different than Orthodox Islam or just normative Islam. It isn't much different. I would say about 80 to 90% of it is the same. It isn't until Sheikh Dawood dies in the 80s that York now begins to change his teaching, add more esoteric elements to the teaching, add claims about himself to the teaching, and also really begins to add followers. Okay? It is after Sheikh Dawood dies that York really begins to gain new followers. And Sheikh Dawood dies in the 80s. In York, the height of York's popularity, or the biggest of his community, was under Islam during this period after Sheikh Dawood's death up until about 1993, 94. Okay? Now, Sheikh Dawood was very important in that he sort of kept York under control. York never wrote anything publicly denouncing Islam or some of the tenets of faith or what Muslims actually believe until after Sheikh Dawood's death. Now, upon his death, York started to transform his teachings. York began to speak about how he's from the Sudanese.
This is a refresher for me.
What was the birthday? The start date was this? Was it 1958, or did you say another date?
Oh, as far as York's community, or the guy? Sheikh Dawood was born. I have it written here. Hold on 1 second. Sheikh Dawood was born. Trying to find my notes on it. Give me 1 second. Okay. Sheikh Daoud was born in 1891.
Okay.
All right. He was born, Sheikh Daoud was born Sheikh Daoud Ahmed Faisal. That's his name. And he died in 1980. 1980.
Okay. And there was a question that was sent in. What's the difference between the Hadith and the Quran? And what is the Hadith?
All right. We're going to get into it. We'll get into it.
Okay.
We'll get into it later. Just simply write it down. We'll keep it as notes, and I'll get back to address that. Because it's an important topic.
This is the guy that preceded York. The guy that he was talking about, that's the guy that York followed before he started up, you know, his shit. So that guy was born at around 1891. Yeah. Where is Jaded?
Familiar with York community during that time. York made that a big issue about the Hadith, which is basically oral tradition. So let's get back to that. Let's get back to where I was as far as Sheikh Daoud. Sheikh Daoud was very important, which even York writes about Sheikh Daoud and how he raised him as a youth, raised him where York lived in the community. Sheikh Daoud visited York's community, Ansar Allah community during the festivals or holidays, right? But the problem with this narrative that York teaches is that nowhere will you find York's picture in any of Sheikh Daoud's publications or any of the events, whether the pictures are by Sheikh Daoud's fellow students or fellow people of his community or Sheikh Daoud's wife, right? You can go online, right? You'll find many tributes to Sheikh Daoud, and I'll spell his name for those who may want to search it. You'll find many tributes that are done for Sheikh Daoud. You'll find many entries on the internet for Sheikh Daoud, and you'll see the old pictures and people who were part of the community, who attended the mashing and whatnot, but you will not find York. Nor will you find York mentioned anywhere, any of this. All right? So let me just spell Sheikh Daoud's name out for those that want to Google search it. All right? So it is D-A-O-U-D Daoud Ahmed A-H-M-A-D, middle name, last name Faisal, F-A-I-S-A-L. All right, so for those who want to Google search it, I tried to spell it. I don't know whether or not you can see it on the board, but I'll bring the camera closer for those that want to see the actual spelling of it. So while York is simultaneously sitting underneath Sheikh Daoud, visiting here, visiting now, because we don't have any documentation for anything that York says that he actually lived with Sheikh Daoud. Meanwhile, York's community is a fledgling community in New York, Jersey, right? It's a small fledgling community that mostly comprises of his family, his brother, and his friends. It's a very small community. And this is how York's community actually begins to take off, right? York is doing a lot of the work himself, which he states he's doing a lot of work himself, traveling and going back and forth. I do have testimony of people of how York used to come in other masjids and try to recruit people. But at some point in time, York and his family, specifically his brother, they break ties. They begin to break ties. And York begins to do his own thing with the followers that continue to follow him. Now, those followers that continue to follow him, you know, they love him. They want to follow him. They want to believe in what he's saying. Because Islam at that time, even it was widely accessible up north. You know, you could learn about the basics. And like I said, York at that time, 80 to 90% of what he was teaching in theology was normative Islam, just regular Orthodox Islam. Now, within Islam, there's lots of room for growth, right? There's lots of room for growth. A person can be a social activist and be Muslim. A person can be into feeding the homeless, or teaching children, or writing books, or poetry, or art, and all these different things, right? So there's lots of room within Islam, and Muslims get involved in a lot of activities. And so these different activities, a lot of times people will say, well, this is that group, and this is that group. But in theology wise,
I would have, but I figured y'all would take my suggestion and go back and watch it yourselves. I told y'all, everything is there. You just have to go back and look. So since y'all won, I pulled the Sankofa on you and went and got it for you.
As of what they believe, they're actually all the same. They're actually all the same. So you may have some group that's against oppression, or one group that wants to
get ready,
a sewing club or whatever, or into agriculture. Right? It's not that they are different; they are the same group. Now, but when it comes to York's group, York is a little bit different. 80 to 90% of
they got a rebuttal group on Facebook.
Normative Islam. The other 10 to 20% is his own thing. And it is York's own thing that gets him in trouble or causes rift with the other communities of Muslims that are living in the Northeast, right? And some of these own things in which York begins to teach very openly after Sheikh Dawood dies.
Hey, Shadow.
For example,
I know, Remy.
You must wear white. You must wear white. York takes this from York takes a quote from Matthew and a verse from the Quran, and he mashes them together.
Look, this is from 2017. It's 2022. Do you know how long it would take if I went through each and every one of these videos we did about York? Because there's a lot. So I figured Prince York has never been brought to justice for, whoa, hold the fucking phone. Prince York has never been brought to justice for abusing that boy, talking about the failure of the conscious community. He was arrested in GA as a fugitive of justice. As for the deposition of the case of abuse with the child, they went to court, but because of a recently passed law, all he got was probation. He is currently in South Carolina and actively trying to free his father. I don't think I forgot anything. And send. Let's continue, shall we? Hey, Don. Oh, yes, and family, I usually don't ask, but if you could donate this week, they took out the year's subscription for the Microsoft Suite. Okay, well, if you want to ask any questions, just hop up. So that was not planned on my bill this month, and Adobe went up. So if you feel like donating, it's 13 of y'all in here. $2 or $3 a piece would probably do it, and I thank you kindly. And let's continue.
Really mashes them together and says, look, right here, it says, you must wear white or go to hell. Now, I know there's some Nubians that won't believe this, but I have the actual book. All right? And it's these beliefs right here where York begins to bump heads with other communities that where he's coexisting at, that begins to cause problems.
See, I paid for most of my stuff in a yearly WAP, but all of it didn't come out at the same time, so this was unexpected. That's why I usually only ask for snacks and new
One of the
equipment.
people that Brother Malik brought up, Bilal Phillips. Bilal Phillips was a Muslim brother who wrote
Sister
a book,
Leah, peace.
late 80s, exposing York. I believe around 89, 90, Ansar Cult book in America came out.
Bilal Phillips.
And when that book hit,
for those of you that want to write it down, B-I-L-A-L.
in a lot of ways. Not only did he immediately leave Islam shortly thereafter, but York also legally changed his name at that point. And I'll get into the name change of what he changed it from and to a little bit later. But before Bilal Phillips, you have people like Malik mentioned, Siraj Wahaj. You had Imam Malik Abdul Majid. And these are two.
I just want to pause this and say, Farouk, Chuck, their memories are freaking amazing. They can quote this shit off the top of their head.
The ones that I remember specifically, they circulated around the community in New York City, right, warning people to be on guard for York and his community and some of the things he teach. They had to do this because 80 and 90%, right, if you wasn't a scholar or well learned within Islam itself, you could get trapped up, because not only were there differences in normative Islam that York was teaching, there were also rumors of York's misconduct going around and circulating within the city. It was just simply Bilal Phillips who exposed it. And I have to find the actual book, but in Bilal Phillips records testimony of male and female members of York's community. He records the testimony, and in Bilal Phillips' book, you can read them. How York used and abused people. How York mandated men and women live separately. How York mandated each person bring in a certain amount of income. And these rumors, and these are actually actual facts, these rumors, as they began to come to the forefront, the other Muslims in the community up in New York and the other boroughs and other cities put out a flyer, a bulletin, which I have. I had to find it. I had to dig in the crates for everyone.
For those of you that are in such things, throw these in the little groups where these people congregate, please, and thank you if y'all know of any Facebook spaces.
Which was given out in the communities to watch out for these guys. They sound nice, but they're not. They sound like good people, but they're not. And eventually, the truth about York does come out. Especially when Bilal Phillips' book does drop. All right. So without getting too far ahead, now let's get back. Back it up a little bit, just a couple years. Then we're going to get to this time in which Sheikh Dawood dies. York's community begins to mobilize, begins to gain influence, gain followers, begins to accelerate. York is now beginning to reach the plateau of, or the apex of, where his community has ever achieved. After about 1993, 95, 96, the community really goes downhill, slowly, gradually, and then just sharply peaks in his rock bottom. So Sheikh Dawood dies. That leaves a void in the community, right? From Sheikh Dawood's legacy, you get another movement which is called Dar Islam.
Good
I'm going to keep
afternoon.
much of my talk in English. In Arabic that I will be using is some keywords for just simply for the understanding. So you have Dar Islam, which literally translates as the place of Islam or the abode of Islam. It's sort of like a mantra title in which the community just shows for itself. All right? Not that it is the place for Islam. As Muslims, they don't do such things like that. Just like we say, you know, my house is the place for Islam, or I am the best of believers. No, we don't do such things like that. So this void that Sheikh Dawood leaves within the community of Orthodox Muslims, York tries to fill it. And in trying to fill it, he's now trying to court the Nation of Islam, 5%ers, Orthodox Muslims who may not be of most knowledgeable, Hebrew Israelites, Rastas. York is now trying to grab and grasp everyone in which he can. Everyone. If Sarnetta was around, if Sarnetta's community as he stands today was around during those times, York would have just tried to take everything as his own because he didn't care. The man had no respect for the actual teachings of a people, their history, their struggles or anything. York would literally culturally, he's basically a cultural vulture. He would literally appropriate for himself other people with no respect to.
Okay, so I hate to see anyone go to jail too, but when you turn into a predator of your own people, then it's time to lock your ass up. We don't have the options that we used to have, and there's only one or two. You know, jail for the criminally insane, or death by firing squad, hanging by the neck till death, lethal injection, you know, those shits. So, you know, I just don't see them as human anymore when they come to this point. That's a monster in the shell of a black man that's running around preying on people. He molested almost 200 children and had almost 200 children. You know, that's not human behavior. That man is sick. He's not a man. That's a monster in a human body. And that's how I can resolve his ass sitting in Supermax to the day he croaks with a red dot on his head, looking at the moon, waiting for the good ship Nibiru to come.
You're trying to fill the void which is left open. So now this is when York begins to get into more of the SO.
He's a former member of the Nuwapians. He had been gone for some time by that time. Shit. I was trying to hit him up, but it doesn't look like he's up right now, so I'm not gonna bother with it. I'm not gonna mess with it. But I had stumbled because like this is from 2017. I got a couple of them keyed up because we've been doing this for a while. But Farouk is a former member, and some members, when they got out, the ones that weren't too messed up or the ones that didn't stay in for too long, they turned around and started exposing York when they found out that he really was perv-tastic. StopBeingNasty.com, StopBeingNasty.net, StopBeingNasty.org, StopBeingNasty.gov. Let's go.
Esoteric. He's trying to make himself esoteric.
That is a worm masquerading as a black man, ladies and gentlemen.
He begins to take on more titles, more names. He's expecting more reverence paid onto him. It is after Sheikh Dawood died that York is now claiming the Sudan and being from the Mahdi family, right? And as my brother Malik mentioned,
that claim of him being from the Mahdi family is pure bunk. He is not an ambassador for the country of Liberia or anywhere else. That nigga was born in Jersey.
There is a group.
Excuse my
There is a
language.
group, and there is a
Libertarian
community
Prince,
of
peace.
Ansars, Ansar Jamaat Ansarullah.
Libertarian, can you set that up? I don't know if she'll come. Yeah, Boston. Thank you, Mitch. I don't know if she'll come over here though, because Chuck be over here. Excuse me.
In Sudan, Jamaat meaning community or group, Hazard Jamaat of Ansars in the Sudan. Now, these people are the legitimate members of the group as well as those of the family. These people are. York tries to assimilate that and bring it back, well, not literally, but bring it to the United States and make himself the center figure. He now places himself as being born in Sudan.
See, that's that same shit that Umar did. I'm a descendant of Frederick Douglass, which turned out to be a lie. The family of Frederick Douglass had to write a whole damn letter, and he's still running around here talking about he a descendant. Just ignorant.
He's no longer born, he's no longer from Boston, Massachusetts. He is now born in the Sudan, and his mother had sex with the president and gave birth to him. I know, it's kind of hard to believe, but
yeah, Leah, you
yes,
right.
This is what York states. His mother had sex with the president and gave birth to him. Now, I have it on authority. I have it on authority of Muhammad Ahmed, right? Muhammad Ahmed is the brother that I speak with. He is on Facebook. Muhammad Ahmed Al-Mahdi. You can speak with him on Facebook, and he is part of the Ansar community of the Sudan. And he has told me from him to myself that he personally delivered the message from the Ansars of the Sudan that York is to cease and desist from his teachings of having any part of the Sudan.
Now, mind you, this is back in like the 70s or the 80s. Sudan had to send a damn letter saying, stop saying you are a family member because you are not. Sound familiar? Uba!
Any relationship with the Sudan, the false teachings that he's teaching and whatnot, all right? And you can also hear the same message by the Amir of the Ansarullah Jamaat of Sudan, to the Sudan. And
did I scare you off, Libertarian?
And is approachable, and you can contact him. And his name is Imam Qari Yusuf Al-Mahdi Al-Sharif. All right? Al-Ahmed, my bad. Let me say it again. Imam Qari.
No, better yet, you know who I want to talk to? I want to talk to Uma's sister that dated Polite. That's who I want to talk to.
Yusuf Ali Ahmed Al-Sharif.
Right, Aaliyah.
If anyone wants to ask later on for the spelling of any of those names so that they may contact him,
cease and
just
desist
send a
letter.
question.
You is not kin to
All right?
us.
And I'll
What
give the
is
spelling
wrong
for
with
you.
you?
Now, Imam Yusuf Ali, Imam Khair Yusuf Ali, he is the present day Amir of the Ansars in the West, meaning here in America. He has been given authorization by those in Sudan to represent them. York never had any of these sort of credentials. York cannot show any of these sort of credentials. York cannot provide any documentation other than some pictures, traveling to Sudan, traveling to Egypt, and just standing there like a tourist, taking pictures with whomever he can take pictures with.
Opportunist.
Likewise,
Libertarian.
when some of the family
Did you hear
from
me?
the Sudan, specifically Saeed Sadiq, came to New York, York used that as a photo op to take pictures with him in order to show his legitimacy. In order to show
Photo ops. photo ops. Uma do photo ops. Polite do photo ops. Freaking Sparrow does photo ops. They learn well. Worms learn well by osmosis.
So his legitimacy. Now, Imam Perry, who is the present-day Amir of the community here in America, he has said that during that time, that York will visit the Sudan, or even when Saeed Sadiq,
yeah, you're right.
once the prime minister of Sudan, visit York's community.
Anybody can. The link's at the top as long as it's on topic.
2, out of appreciation, and 3, out of ignorance.
I want to talk to Uma's sister that dated
what
Polite.
Exactly York was teaching.
For like 2 weeks.
But when they did find out, they cut him off. And the brother Muhammad Ahmed, whom I referenced the first time, he was the brother that personally stepped to York personally and said, cease and desist.
Cease and
Now,
desist.
the brother Muhammad Ahmed also says that for a little while, York straightened up. He straightened up some of the teachings, but it didn't take long until York then again begins to deviate and goes off into his own little world for his own purposes. Right? So that's the Sudan. Remind you, York does not begin to form his own theology until after the passing of Sheikh Dawood. Now, some of the things in which York begins to teach, which I will cover, that are completely false in Islam, is, I can bring up a couple of examples here. Let me take it from this book. Where's the Tabernacle of the Most High? It doesn't have a cover. I lost the cover someplace. But anyone from your community can recognize that this is indeed a book from.
Sorry about the quality. This is kind of old.
You recognize this is indeed one of York's books right here. And then York has a lot of things in this book, which this page right here is the Suhuf. I'm gonna get into that as well. What the Suhuf is. Right? This is definitely one of York's books. And so just simply going through one of your books, I can break it apart and show you where York has just literally disrespected what Islam actually teaches, right? And just going off on his own. The first one, which is on page 66 of this book, and I'll quote it. Page 66. Right? York says, you do have to wear white. You do have to live in a community. Right? These are some of your teachings.
But this is from 2017. You know, them Google rooms wasn't that.
There is no such thing.
Great.
Community as in the context in which.
But we was rocking though.
His community is.
I mean, it's better than a VHS tape.
Let me see your health records. Let me see your criminal records. And by the way, all females send a picture. Right? And brothers, you can send one as optional. Right?
Yeah, Jasmine, that's why they ultimately got ran out of New York proper. When they was over there, any other time I could say it. That first community they had though, they was fine for a while. Like after York got checked, they was good. And then the activist got killed in the community green, and then shortly thereafter they got ran out. I might be mixing up stories, but I think that's how it goes.
Pictures that you filled out your application and sent it in, so you can be whether or not you can be accepted or not. Make sure you had it.
That is some other. He was warping the teachings.
When actually,
look, that is York's stock and trade. If he got hold to your religion, he warped the teachings. That's why I tell people, don't sit up here talking about, well, it's some information. Look. York got all that shit he wrote out of either a book a movie, or some kind of radio program. And he and I forgot, occultist and esoteric books, New Age in quotes. And he incorporated all of that into the Quran, into the Talmud, into the Bible. Heck, he told you not to go over to India, and then proceeded to put Indian religion teachings into his words. You know, it's nothing that you can find in York's books that's gonna do you any good, because it's gonna turn you dead to the left. Basically, York made a choose your own adventure religion. Well, it's a couple of transitions, Aaliyah. Yeah, Jasmine. But they tell you, okay. Oh, libertarian. Do you know Uma's sister? If you do, the one that dated Polite. If you do, get you hook up an interview. That would be awesome. I don't know if Uma would come on here, because if she comes, I'm gonna bring Chuck. It's like he made a choose your own picture book religion. You know, you can stop here at the Ansars, or you can wait till we become cowboys. Or wait, maybe you want to go all the way and become an extraterrestrial, a la Scientology. You know, because when you enter, okay, libertarian, it was just a question. It's good. It's cool either way. But, you know, I got Uma IG, but I highly doubt she'll respond to a message from me. Yeah, it's like he smushed everything into one, and it just depends, because some people dropped off at the Ansar phase and just stayed Ansar. And then, you know, this, that, and the other. But let's continue, because we got a couple of these to go through, and they are not short. I'm going to skip through. Like, we got Farouk and Malik on here. Since Malik is talking about Bambaataa more than likely, we're going to skip that part, and we're going to go to the next one. Yeah, they are, because, okay, we don't think about the ramifications of this man not only molesting 100 and something children, but he had people that had children and they were never deprogrammed. They've been running around amongst us for 20 some odd years. 20 some odd years as a grown up. Look, 21 Savage was down there. He grew up on the compound partly. York had ties to the music industry. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's fact. Let me be the one on Christmas. Even though he was terrible, he still had ties to the music industry, and he was still producing people. With $3.06. All this stuff is permeated within popular culture, and y'all don't even realize it. Yeah, Jasmine. Oh no, never. I was over there on the Christian Truther side of YouTube, and somebody was like, "Look what I found." They was from the UK, and they was like, my homeboy, he was like, "Yeah, that's York stuff," and I'm like, "York?" And I started poking around, and I ended up over here in the bush in this treehouse with some binoculars looking at the conscious community. I'm just the conscientious observer, and when you see something wrong, you say something. And I'm from Georgia, and I didn't know this motherfucker existed till like 2016. So, yeah.
None of that was really important, right? But we have here, and I'm quoting York in the first person, you do have to wear white. You do have to live in the community. Now, this is one of these,
Jasmine, you wasn't here last night. They hiding out on Clubhouse now. They done pretty much got ran off of Facebook. So they still got Facebook pages, but they active on Clubhouse. They done made rooms and shit talking about free Dr. York.
Like I said, York is synthesizing.
Right, Jasmine.
Genesis chapter 12.
Peace, glad to have you.
Genesis chapter 12, verse 5 through 8. In the Quran, second chapter, verse 32. Right? And in the synthesis.
Oh, wait, Jasmine, I have an assignment for you. If you are petty enough to accept it, email me. This is gonna be fun.
York is reading from the Old Testament of Genesis,
Rubbing my
where it
hands
says
like
that
Birdman.
after leaving Egypt, Moses and Aaron dwelled in the land in Canaan as a community. Now, York deliberately takes this out of context, right? In order to bolster his position.
Well, see, I come from a unique position because I never followed none of these folks. See, that's how I got on. You ain't been over here long, Aaliyah. Eugene, we ain't forgot about you. We on your hair. We on your hairline. Like that spray-on hair from the 80s. Remember them fucking commercials in the middle of the night? As seen on TV. The men used to sit in them chairs and they used to shake that can up and spray that shit on their hair.
And
yeah, I dropped down around the time where Polite got fake arrested on Hollywood Boulevard. Okay. And I was like, this man full of shit. And then I saw Omar and I was like, he full of shit. And I saw, I saw all of them and I said, what in the world is y'all doing? And I felt obligated to help my people. And here we are today in 2022, still pushing.
History of the Prophet Muhammad, as Malachi was alluding to, and how the Prophet Muhammad, when he first began to preach and teach, was in Mecca, and then he migrated to Medina, and they lived as a community. Now, the context of those two references that York
we
gives
left
on
York
page
alone for a little while
is in
because I
reference to
figured
a people
everybody was
traveling,
getting a burnout.
and then for the sake of safety,
said, okay, if y'all don't know the setup, I'm gonna pause Farouk for a minute and I'm gonna talk. If y'all don't know the setup, Malachi Z York went to jail in 2003, 2004. Morning, Gary. That was the Tamarade, as we pettily call it over here. That's when they raided Tamarade. But on the video, on the original video, it's a video where they and the date come up and then it says the Tamarade. But York went to jail like 2003, 2004. He got convicted of various charges, being nasty. Yeah. So then you have Michael E. Nowak Jr. Where that Junior come from, boy? Oh, wait. He was born in the 80s. They wanted to make you seem legitimate and not a bastard. Eugene, quit hiding, bitch. But back to the story. So Eugene goes to jail for some offense or whatever he went to. Either way, he was away. Amalette, that's his bottom B, she started sending him York literature. And when he got out, he decides he wants to be a Yorkie. He decides he wants to be a Nuwapian and all this other stuff. And they start calling him True Light. Now, mind you, York isn't the only one he followed or whatever. But he was running one of York's bookstores. Some stuff happened with the family. He left. He started doing debates. He got hooked up with that filthy guy I don't know no more. Y'all know who I'm talking about. And the rest is history. He never met York in person. He never met York in person. He went to the jailhouse one time and he didn't get to see him. He communicated with York by letter until York's letters got restricted. And York, he says that York married him in Amulet, but I don't know no judge that sent a marriage in by mail. And he also named their children by he named their first baby by letter, and I'm assuming that he named the other child that Polite neither sees nor has custody of. So fast forward to now, and Eugene is going to court on the 12th. They changed the date from the 13th to the 12th, so it's no longer on Friday 13th. It's on Thursday the 12th. But yeah, so when that happened, I went on a Eugene Needs to Go to Jail campaign, and then we started delving back in New York. So then I felt like everybody was getting a little bit of burnout because we was going through the court documents, and those are hard to take. So we kind of switched gears, and then Eligio got arrested, Sparrow got arrested, then Eligio got arrested, and here we are now. But we found an enclave of, his undocumented wives. And we've learned a lot of information over this time. So, like, we found an enclave of New Wapians on Clubhouse yesterday. I just kind of stumbled on them. So now we coming back to York. It's kind of like full circle again. So I think the ones that have been here are going to have I know they're going to have a better understanding, but they're going to have a better understanding than they did the first go around. And all of the older people, please help answer the questions in the chat. If you know the answer, if you just speculating, just hold it off and ask your question. Okay, Shadow. But yeah, let's continue with Farouk.
Safety, security, or just simply because they are alike in many ways. They live together in proximity.
He was calling himself True Light, and then it was Amun-Re, Set Atum-Re, something, and then there is the Grand Apperception and the Illustriousness Suits, amongst other names. They just change names when they change costumes. That's all it is.
That is not what York is teaching. Likewise, the context of this, you will not find this today practiced by any
because we know where his family from, Jasmine.
Christian, Jew, Hebrew, Israelite, or Muslim. We don't live like that. Those two verses are contextual. York intentionally takes them out of context in order to form his community. Bear in mind, his community, York's, is nothing like that of Sheikh Dawood's. Sheikh Dawood's community and the other communities around the world today and during that time in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, no one lived together in a compound like York was proposing. No one. They didn't do that. As a matter of fact, you'll find verses in the Quran where they go, Ar-Rijal Qawwamuna an-Nisa, right? Ar-Rijal Qawwamuna an-Nisa. Men are the maintainers of women. Now, the context of this is men are the head of the households. Men are the providers and protectors of women. Specifically speaking, first, domestically. Domestically, that means your wife. That means your daughters. That would extend to your immediate family, right? Providing and looking out for them. It's not an unheard of thing. But what York is asking for is much more. And this is one of the problems in which York has when it comes to the communities of other Muslims in the area. What York is asking for is devotees. York is asking for you to move in, live in the compound, work for him, slave for him, do him, please him,
Yeah,
then you'll get
Jasmine.
to heaven. Literally.
But I mean, think about this. If you sit up there and listen to them True Light tapes that York put out on repeat, yeah, Leah, so do I. They got lasting consequences to deal with. But if you listen to that stuff long enough, you'll start talking like them too. Don't necessarily have to grow up down there. And there's people that was on the compound that say they don't know Polite. They came out and said Polite. The family came out and said that Polite never met York. He didn't grow up on the land, and neither did Amunet.
And then you will get to heaven. Then your name will be written in the book of the Lamb. Then you will be recognized by the Most High. Then you will be of the 144,000 that will be raised up to Zion. Well, Zion is where they will depart from. And York specifically says, not the Zion of the east, but the Zion of the west, upstate New York. All right? I want to give Malik a chance to come in. I don't want to take up too much so that I can just continue to go on. I got a couple things I want to go over, and I hope to share.
Okay, well, we had a question for you. Were you a follower of Dwight?
Okay, all right. Good question. All right. Let me give a little background about myself. I was a Nubian, current context, an Ansar, Nubian Hebrew, Nubian Islamic Hebrew. All these names of York's community are synonymous. They're basically all the same. Right? I was a member. I was a member for about 10 years, from the late 80s up until early 80s. Early 80s until about 1990. I would say 96. It's kind of difficult to pinpoint when I actually left, because you leave physically the community, but it takes a little while for some of the mental junk to actually get out your head. You know, you actually, okay, I'm done with that. Now, my position in the community, I was a regular foot soldier like everyone else. Most of the time, I got out there, put in the work, brought home, tried to bring home the requirements, $50, $100.
Your nephew was there?
Just like everyone else.
Do you think he'd want to come on and talk about it? If he doesn't, it's understandable, because a lot of them don't.
Let's move to
but the more we know, the more it adds to it.
Before they move down south, they actually did a dry run down south, specifically here in Florida. I helped set up communities here in Florida. Drove one of York's personal students, someone who's very close to him. I was his driver and assistant, and helped collect money and this and that. So,
because what it does when more people come out, because look, there is still an active campaign to discredit York's victims. So the more people that come out and say, yeah, this happened, yes, this happened, it gives validity. In anybody with a right mind, we don't need no more evidence. Look, let me stop sharing this for a minute and let me show you something. And this is not the only folder that I have. Don't get it twisted. But this is my main folder on York. Just Dwight. Everybody got their own. This is just Dwight. And you can see all of this. And then you see these sprinkled in. Now, these are the court documents. We got York's birth certificate. Well, that's his son shit, but yeah. Trial volume 5, trial volume 6. I got 1, 2, 3. Well, I got 2, 3, and 4 too somewhere. Yeah, here go 2. Yeah, there we go. 6, 5, 6. Why do I have these on here twice? Hold on. View. Plagiarism and Nuwapianism. Trial. This is Habiba's trial transcript. This is another victim's child transcript. Here goes York's birth certificate. You know, here goes, or these are the same two. I don't know why I keep double downloading shit. And then the other ones are in another folder. But you get the and then hold on, let me pull this up. Chuck Morgan has made a website that's gonna be up to perpetuity. Chris 456, peace and welcome. Don't mention her name, please, Chris. She doesn't want her name out because you know how they do. But York has a whole website, not York. Chuck Morgan has a whole website, 360 questions to ask Nuwapians, nuwapianism.com. I'll drop it in the chat. It's no problem. You didn't know. Every question damn near that you could come up with is here. And he got it segmented off. Malachi York, plagiarism, the holy tablets, wrong knowledge. Let's just click on one. Malachi Z York. Ask the Nuwapians, if Malachi Z York was the spiritual son of Enki and Enki was a P word, did he learn from his spiritual father? See, it's all there. It's all there. I was finna shed alive.
As far as myself personally,
before I became interested in York, I was a student of knowledge, just like everyone else. A student of knowledge. Wherever I could find it, I read it. Wherever I could find it. I was in high school. Into my high school year, graduating, going into college. Actually quit school in order to fully commit to the community. In the beginning, I was halfway in, halfway out, but later on, moving in, right, into the community. I personally have not been in the physical presence of York. I have been in the presence of some of York's wives, some of his children, some of the brothers who have been part of the community before me. I personally have been in their presence and learned things as an Ansar from them. There any other questions about myself?
No, we got another question, but it's more about Dwight.
All right.
Okay, it's two of them actually. First one is, how did York respond to being denounced by the Sudanese?
Oh, okay. All right. Well, York's response was basically, we don't need them. We don't need them. His response was kind of subtle. It began kind of slow, he was almost an Ansar apologetic. He began to write publications about how we were different. The Ansars in the West are different from the Ansars in the East. And then he begins to ramp it up, how the Ansars of the Sudan have been corrupted. He then begins to write things about, basically, by the time he walks his way back out of the whole Ansar of the Sudan, of the West thing, by the time he walks himself back out of that hole he dug for himself, he has completely left Islam at this point. But during the time in which he claimed Islam, right, and also claimed to be Hebrew, because that was the stage in which York used in order to leave Islam, to become Hebrew proper. Not Hebrew Islamic, not Nubian Islamic Hebrews, but Nubian Hebrews. We dropped the Islamic title. So York basically said, hey, screw y'all, we don't need y'all. We different. We different over here. And I'm gonna show you we different. One monkey don't stop no show, we're gonna do our own thing. And that's how he pretty much handled it. He did not reply back to the Ansars. He did not try to reestablish connections with those in the Sudan. He basically just cut it off. All those other years in which York promoted how he's so close and he's intertwined in the blood,
oh my bad,
just basically went out the window. And for most of the followers,
they didn't think anything of it. They didn't think anything of it at all. So I'm gonna show you how far York went to make himself seem legitimate, as far as being an Ansar and of the Sudan. Like I said, the first thing in which he did, trying to establish his legitimacy, was saying that his mom got on a plane, was in Egypt for studies, doing some sort of foreign land studies, studying abroad. And while she was in Egypt, met a man who was then to be the president of Sudan, met a man and had sex with this man and became pregnant. Now, the timeline in which York claims his mom got pregnant, had the baby and everything, makes his mom look real bad. York makes his mom look like slut. Not only does he make the president of Sudan also put shade on him, makes him look bad as well, but York does not have any problem throwing anybody under the bus. Be it his mom, his brother, his father, anyone, or even those who served him in the community. So I'm gonna take it there just for a moment. York's mom has a child at the time in which York gives the date, and this child is only a couple months old when York claims his mother traveled to the Sudan. All right, and according to York's version of the story, his mom becomes pregnant, gives birth, June 26, 1945, right? And if we go back in the dates and we adjust for the gestation period in which it is required for a woman to carry a child and give natural birth, a natural term birth, 9 months, we will see that York's mom had to have landed in Egypt, and within the first 1 or 2 weeks had to hook up with this man, had sex, and got pregnant. And so now York City supposedly comes from this lineage, supposedly. Now York never provides any family tree in his publication to any of his relatives other than one man, Saeed Sadiq, a former prime minister, head of state of Sudan, who wasn't even a prime minister when he did visit New York City and stopped by York's Ansar Allah community. York does not say or buy pictures for any of his other stepbrothers, cousins, aunts, nieces, nephews, any of the legitimate family tree, a legitimate family reunion like you and I would have, when everyone shows up for that family reunion, except Saeed Sadiq. Right? And there's a lot of things that York makes up and claims of how come he never used this claim back in the 60s, back in the early 70s, blah, blah, blah. How come you're using this claim after Sheikh Dawood dies? This, that, and the other. And York says, well, I couldn't use those things because the family name would have got you killed back in those days. Now, this too is a lie. Right? Because York, the Mahdi family, right? Starting from 1952, you have Abdel al-Rahman al-Mahdi, right? He's the head of the country of Sudan. He's the president. So all terms we'll call him the president. After him, in 1964, you have El-Khatim al-Khalifa, right? In 1964. He too is an Ansar. He is from the Ummah party. The Ummah party is the political wing of the Ansar.
Nikwa B is now number 2 on the global soul charts. 2 is right behind 1. So by tomorrow, let's push her up, please. 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 Congratulations, boo.
All right. Can we meet? Can we speak? Can I peek?
Let's get some sunflowers in the chat for our beautiful Nikwa B. Number 2 on the global soul charts this week and climbing higher.
Undercover prices, K-White, cold, making differences, sharing luminaries, playing Pictionary, my black solution, military. Let's be extraordinary. Walking past with mathematician, we pursue equals no division. Admire your mind, your talent, your frame, your condition. Exchange your love with tradition. Light me up, fire, Chris, harmonies, Merry Christmas. My holiday heart, my piano. This choir alto soprano. My vinyl record crackling sound, my brown colored ground. La-di-da-di-da. Speaking French procession. Your perfection, antique collection. Southern low like pit feet and dress on. Smother me like turkey wings with mac and cheese. My pound cake, lemon squeeze.
It's in the emojis. Don't worry, Gary. I got you.
But can we meet? Can we speak? Can I peek at all the loveliness you have this week? Information. No need for documentation. Just
I got you, Gary. Look at the screen.
And remain ready to receive downloads. Look deep within the third eye, where there is no lie. As we stand before each other, naked and unashamed. Stripped down to the core, we can only be raw and real. Intertwined, we touch, and the center of our universe is healed. Can we just be?
Well, it's real enough. Do I have to call your husband and tell him to pinch your butt? You making it, boo. And you gonna make it. Congratulations, love. One more round of applause for Nick will be in the chat. And let's get back to it. Done.
Of community in the Sudan. After Al-Qatim,
yes, I am, Gary. Yes, I am.
You have Abdullah Al-Fadil Al-Mahdi. Al-Mahdi. Now, here's another person from the Mahdi family using his family name, not afraid to put it out there, in 1965. And you have Sadiq Al-Mahdi, the so-called cousin of York, who isn't. He was in power in Sudan from 1966 to 1967, and then again in 1986 to 1989. And then you also have a man by the name of Muhammad Ahmed Mahmoud, right? He too is an Ansar from the political wing of the Ummah Party in 1969. So at no point in time was the Ummah Party or the Ansarullah community in the Sudan or the Mahdi family name ever in jeopardy, ever had to take refuge because, you know, they were hunting them down and trying to kill them. No, that's just simply an excuse that York used to lie to his followers. Like I say, when Sheikh Dawood dies, now York can get it. Now York can just go buck wild with whatever he wanted to teach because the old Sheikh kept him in check, and watched him. York couldn't lie while the man was living. It's only after his death. And likewise, York does that.
No problem.
On the dead, York tells a lot of lies, quickly, in order to make himself look better, in order to make himself look grander than he is, actually. And I hope that answers the question. York just simply said we didn't need them, we're different. They do their thing, we do our thing over here. You said you had a second question.
Yeah, I said, would York still be relevant in 2017 if he was free?
No, not at all. Not at all. York would not be relevant. One of the things that allowed York to use Islam, right, was that York came out in the height of his community, and much of what he taught and his popularity was before the age of the internet. So people didn't really have accessibility to a lot of teachings and parallel studies and this and that. So in 2017, York will literally burn up. He will literally burn up in his tracks. As soon as he come with that pseudoscience, as soon as he come with he's gonna teach Islam or teach the Meta or teach about the Syrian, or he's gonna teach about Mesopotamian culture, he would lose all his legs from underneath him. York could not. Now many Nuwabians would like to say, no. York used to do debates early on in AOL and in the chat rooms, but that's nothing. That was the very beginning years of the internet. That's in a closed forum. And the sisters, the mates, the wives, and the sisters that supported York during those chat rooms, right? They were feeding him answers and what to say and what not to say. And if I'm correct, even sometimes that wasn't even York speaking, because York had a habit of using other members in the community works as his own. Right, and Chuck Morgan can attest to that as well, because York used a lot of his work and publication for his own. Chuck never got paid for it like a lot of other people. But as far as relevancy in 2007, York would literally committed suicide if he got out there. He would literally commit suicide. There's too much information.
Makita.
The conscious community running him around in circles. He literally would be the sparring partner in the conscious community, like the Nuwabians are today. They literally are just merely the sparring. That's who you spar with, until you get your resume up to par, to actually take the stage on a formal platform to exchange idea on an open discussion or a debate. Now, York, even in his days, York likes to say, well, Dr. York, he debated everyone. He left his front door wide open. You could come and you could ask him questions, and you could debate him, and he answered all the questions, and no one can defeat him. That too is a lie. Yes, York left the door open for anyone to come in, but that means come in his community, on his ground, on his turf, on his platform, and debate or ask questions. Not all the debates or discussions got taped and released. They didn't. Only the ones that showed York in favorable light. And York didn't always take the stage as well. all the brothers would simply take the stage, answer questions. When York felt like coming out and to discuss a matter, he would. He would. Or he would say something. And 2017, I can tell you this. York wants to get out and jump on the scene on the conscious community or any community. He would wish he was back in Supermax. He would wish he was back in Supermax. He would be exposed so quickly and he would look so badly, it would just literally be a shame. Now, what York does to himself concerning Islam, grabbing it, twisting it, making it his own, it's nothing new, it's nothing unique. York does the same thing when it comes to Christianity, when it comes to Judaism, when it comes to teaching about Rastafarianism, when it comes to teaching about ancient Egyptian culture, Medinetter, when it comes to teaching about South American indigenous culture and their tradition, York hijacks all of that, steals what he wants, creates his own narrative, and then puts it out. So at no point, at any time, could York take the stage and debate anyone from any of those respective communities and debate them one-on-one. He can't.
And neither can his little so-called
Neither in
students
Judaism, Mesopotamian
that's
culture,
still following his message.
Egyptology, Medinetter, any of those things. So York literally has no relevancy today in 2007, and this is why the Nubians look the way they look now, out of place, out of sync, and out of time. You have any other questions?
Yeah, it was one asking, do you think York's ever been incarnated with beings?
I guess the question is addressed to me. Did York ever make the claim, or do I believe that?
Do you think that? I think, hold on, let me scroll back up and reread it. Do you think?
No. I do not believe or think New York has ever been incarnated by beings. Now, within Islam, right, we do believe in spirits, right? Very much like a lot of indigenous cultures do. Believe in spirits or influential forces. I would say York appears from his action, he looks like a man that is possessed. He acts and carries himself like a man who is possessed. He has no respect for culture. He has no respect for his followers. He has no respect for women. He has no respect for those that came before him, the ancestors. He has no respect for them. The question itself, do I believe that York has been incarnated, is subjective. It's a subjective question based upon my own observation. I generally, when speaking about York, try to stick to the objective questions, not so much the subjective ones. But I personally, no, I don't believe he is anyone of grandeur. Anyone. He's not El Cook. He's not he's not none of those beings of grandeur that he talks about. Now, what I will say is those beings that York talks about in his books as being the evildoers or the fallen or the transgressors and people like that, those beings that York writes in his books, York is writing by himself. York is writing by himself. And when you read York's books, if anyone out there has a chance to get to maybe some of his older publications or even his older publications, because the newer ones is just junk. It's just simply sophistry. But if you have a chance to get to some of his older stuff, you'll see. York is literally talking about himself. Literally talking about himself. So he really is snitching on himself, even way back then. But people were too caught up in his esoteric and charisma to want to acknowledge it. But myself, no, I don't believe he's anything special.
Okay. So the last question was, somebody said they was around me, and also they said, where did York get the idea of the surahs in Al-Quran being out of sequence?
Mm-hmm. That's a good one. All right, I'll take that one. And this is sort of, that question is sort of related to the oral tradition within Islam. This oral tradition, Hadith, Hadith is basically the Islamic terminology for it. The oral tradition. Within the science, Hadith is basically the word which is used for the oral tradition. Right? York's concept, not concept, but York's publication and writing about the Quran being out of sync, not in its correct order, right? This actually comes from Muslims. This actually comes from Orthodox Islam, because it is the Muslims who actually have the record of the verses in which, when they were revealed, at what time and at what place. And the Muslims also have the record in which the Prophet dictated which verses are to be placed which chapters are to be placed together, which Hazab, where the Hazab begins and where it ends. So what York was doing, York was providing information to people who did not know, but calling it his own. Basically plagiarism. Not taking the time and noting and telling and teaching the people where he learned it from, where it came from, or anything. So the history of what was the first verse is widely known as Surah Al-Iqra Bismi Rabbika, right? This is the first verse. This is the first verse that was revealed to the Prophet, right? And Surah Fatiha, which is actually the first chapter in which you will, which you see arranged. These are two different times, two different periods, and their arrangements and the knowledge of when they were arranged and how they were arranged and when it was revealed are both known by Muslim scholars. York didn't do anything other than take the information, make it a mystery, and then give it back to the people as if he's the man, when actually he's not. And York has a habit of doing that. A habit. And this too is what also caused a problem with York in the community around, within the community of other Muslims up in New York in the Northeast, and as his community begins to grow. And this is concerning the oral tradition. Now, within Islam, you have the Quran, which is the book, the revelation given onto the Prophet Muhammad, and then you have the oral tradition of the Prophet Muhammad. Now, York made it a point to instill and drill into the people that the oral tradition of Islam needs to be cut off. Don't read it. Don't take their words, take mine. All right? Now, at the same time, York is trying to cut off the oral tradition within Islam. He's replacing it with his own tradition. He's replacing it with his own statements. He's replacing it with his own, thus says the Lamb, which is a book. York's own actual oral tradition, Hadith, where he says, thus says the Lamb, meaning York. And York does that in many other publications. For example, York tells the men, don't grow your beard like this. Let me just use mine. Don't grow your beard like this. Grow your beard like, because you're imitating Orthodox Muslims. Grow your beard like this. The goatee with the slender connection around the jawline up into the forehead, right? And this is called the Midian cut, right? York advises them and tells them from his own oral tradition to do this and to do that. Meanwhile, it is in the oral tradition within Islam that you begin to learn how to pray. You begin to learn how to make Hajj, treat one another. You learn at, instead of going to keep it English, you learn manners. You learn etiquette. You learn, there's many things in which you learn from the oral tradition accompanied by the Quran. York cuts them off from that. And by doing so, York is now able to make up his own rules. Make up his own rules, in which within Islamic sciences is called Sharia. York begins to make up his own rules. You can have more than one wife. York begins to marry mother, sister, and daughter, which is completely forbidden within Islam. I speak upon this in just very briefly. Matrilineal marriages within Islam is forbidden. Matrilinear, meaning maternal, linear, meaning going from on the women-related maternal side. You cannot marry the mother, the daughter, the sister, and the aunt. You can't do it. Right? You can't do it. It's explicitly forbidden.
I'm still going.
York does such a thing. York does such a thing because he has cut people off from the oral tradition in which the Prophet has said this or he said that. His wives, the Prophet Muhammad's wives, said this and said that concerning female issues. Now, the Prophet Muhammad was a male, but concerning female issues, the Prophet Muhammad didn't have a menstruation. Did not breastfeed. So there's a lot of issues in which the prophet instructs concerning female issues or collective issues or social issues. Right? And so by doing so, York creates this own stigma about himself. He creates this stigma about the oral tradition, only to, and now in 2017, the Nawabians are ripping and running around here talking about they follow the oral traditions of their ancestors. Niggas, get out of here. Really, get out of here. You make one statement and now you're contradicting yourself later on. But concerning the order of the Quran, the order in which it was put together in a book, right? The Mus'haf, the Quran itself, the order in which it was put down, that is already written on paper. We have the historical record, how and when it took place. Likewise, when the first verse was revealed, that too is also historically recorded within the oral tradition within Islam. Within the oral tradition of Islam. So for those who don't have it, the only place you can possibly get it from is from York, as he makes up his own story, his own version of it. Sorry, I went on a little bit too long on that one.
Oh, it's no problem. So somebody wanted to know how many languages you spoke.
All right. I can tell you, it is not 19. I do not speak 19 languages like many Nubians.
Ain't it though, Yemi? This is why I told y'all to go back and see. This is why I told everybody to go back and listen to these themselves, because this is just one. And you see how much information you get from one video. They was like packing it all in because they didn't know when they come back or if they come back, at the time. So, yeah.
Getting to, he's at 17, 16, 17, he's working on 19. I do not speak 19 languages. I speak English. First and foremost, I speak English. I speak, if you want to consider it a language, pidgin language, I speak Gullah as well. I'm Geechee. My wife is Haitian, so I speak a little
Open
Creole.
scroll. Hey, boo.
I learned Arabic, right? I did learn Arabic. I'm my studies and learning of Arabic is continuing. Don't say I'm a master of Arabic Luga, but I do speak and read it. I had some years in college, in high school or college. I think I took 2 years of Spanish. Languages, I would say after English, it would be Arabic. My most dominant 2 languages that I speak. Now, while in the community, I did learn Nubic, which is a language in which you're created within the community. I did learn Nubic. All right.
Okay. The next question are your thoughts on the matter being deciphered.
That's off topic. That's off topic. I want to stick with that's off topic for tonight. But I want to stay on topic tonight with the show, which Malik and myself brought up as far as York and his false claim of teaching the people Islam. And we had to bring this up because the Nubians run around saying that all those were schools. And from that school, we went on to another school and to another school. Now, I thought it was important, and Malik thought it was important because it's only within the school of Islam that York reached the heights that he does. York's community under Islam, his community does not grow as large as it does under Islam. And I thought it was important because York disrespects those who trusted in him in a video where York says, I had to take Islam in order to hide in it because I thought and felt that it was the most ridiculous thing, and I can get away with anything and say anything and none of y'all would know, and I could just hide and protect us from what I actually have to teach, right? And so in that statement, York disrespects those who actually trusted in him prior to the school or the field, which they say
peace and blessings to you as well, Aaliyah.
And so, go ahead.
Let's say, when did you start to doubt York's teachings and why?
I would say when I got my hands on Bilal Phillips' book. Now, mind you, Bilal Phillips' book came out in the early 90s, 89, 90s, right? By the time I got my hands on it, this is mid to late 90s. And I had read York's rebuttal to the book. And it seemed nice. It seemed cute. It seems concise. Okay, all right, you know. And it continued to get me by as a follower of York. But when I finally got my hand on a copy of Bilal Phillips' book, and I began to read it and see some of the things in which was said in them, and actually begin to bring up some of the points that Bilal makes, and go back to some of York's older books and begin to compare and contrast, that's when I began to see some kinks in York. This rebuttal book that he put out is weak. It was weak. But yet I stayed with the community until I began to see and hear other characteristics of York and of other people who lived in the community that were very close to York. And then I began to see, okay, not only are some of the teachings false, they can't even get Islam right. We done moved on to Nubian Hebrews. They get this wrong. And I'm beginning to see more and more devilishment, more and more disagreeable people. I'm beginning to hear more and more people talk about York, they themselves. And that's when I decided to just pull back from the community. That's when I pulled back from the community. Pulling back from the community, I was able to assess my thoughts, reevaluate things, and look at the community unbiased by myself. And at a certain point in time, I realized that I basically had wasted approximately 10 years of my life. Literally wasted practically 10 years of my life following this junk. Just junk. And so I have people come up to me that remember me, or even when I'm having a conversation with my wife, and she'll bring up something about a song in the 90s or a movie in the 90s. And I have to explain to people, I have no idea what you're talking about. I got about 10 years of my life where I wasted, where there was no music other than Art Nubian, York music, and there was no movies. You know, I literally have a gap that is just simply wasted. Now, Wabians are like to jump on that and see, well, he sounds bitter. No, I'm not bitter. I'm not bitter at all about the whole thing. It was a learning process, and I lived through it. But I wouldn't want that for anyone else. And that's why I make it my mission to come on with your help, undo the untruths that I help promote, teach, with your permission and providing me the platform. I'm able to get on this platform and to apologize to those whom I brought into the community, to those at the Black colleges that I visited and tabligh, meaning preached to, called to join the community. Those people in college, those people whom I got to quit their jobs to join the community, those people who, when they joined the community, gave up everything to follow this fake imam, fake rabbi, fake pharaoh, this hustler,
Fake
pimp,
Pharaoh.
child molester, pedophile, you know, Dwight York. So I apologize from my heart to all of those, sincerely. All those that I brought into the community, you have my deepest regrets and apologies. And York, a lot of people were just simply fascinated by the charisma of York and some of the things he used to teach, especially back in those days, because York could tell a lie and make it sound good. York could tell a lie and make it sound good. And that's one of the things that attracted a lot of people. So a lot of people may not be familiar with some of York's older books. Well, York's older books have many quotations from scriptures such as the Quran or the Bible, or these scriptures York mentions being the Suhuf. The Suhuf. Now, as Muslims and non-Muslims, many people are familiar with the Quran and the Bible, right?
Okay,
but
Remy.
you have what's also called the Suhuf. The Suhuf is mentioned in the Quran, but is simply mentioned by name.
I might stop this and
it is not a scripture
come back
which
after
anyone
you go off.
within the Muslim community says that they are in possession of. Yet York claims to be in possession of it. And not only the Suhuf, but York goes on to fabricate and elaborate his descriptions of the Suhuf into actually 5 books, which York writes about. The Suhuf of Adam, Enoch, Idris, Abraham, and I believe I'm leaving one out. So when it comes to the false teachings of York and him never teaching the people proper Islam, that's one of them. As Muslims, we believe what's revealed in the book, right? As followers of the book, we believe what's in the book. But nowhere in the book does it mention what York mentions, the Suhuf of Adam, Enoch, Seth, Abraham. Nowhere does it mention any of those things. So that's a false claim in which York makes concerning Islam, amongst many others. Now, when people go to York's books, they have to understand that York's books are nothing more than sophistry, right? Sophistry. And I'll spell this word out for those that may not be familiar with its meaning. Okay? Sophistry is spelled S-O-P-H. Here we go. I-S-T-R-Y. Sophistry. All right? Now, the meaning of sophistry is information which is disseminated, or given out, or told with malice purposes. With malice purposes. They have bad intentions.
We've learned a new word today, family. Sophistry.
Sophistry.
Sophistry. The use of fallacious arguments, especially with the intention of deceiving. We see a whole lot of that going on right now, like, oh, say, ER and his clickbait titles. That would be sophistry.
Is behind them. You can look this word up. It's in the English words, not in common usage, but in academia, it is. Within historical academia, it is. And York's works, his books, all of his books, nothing more than sophistry. Nothing more than sophistry. Because behind all of York's books, York has one aim.
Telling you a lie with the intent to deceive.
Aim. And that's to please himself. That's York's complete purpose and aim in all of these. So where York may make a statement, let me give you an example. Well, let me first say this, right? Within Islam, we do not have sophistry.
Now let me say this. If we hear this word bandied around in the next 48 hours, we know who been watching. We know who been watching. Sophistry is tempting.
Give you what we believe as the truth, wholesale. We're gonna give you a little bit, and when you get that, we're gonna give you the rest. We'll give you what I really came to teach you, or teach you one thing and then flip it upside down. This is what it is. It is what it is. Simple as that. But York doesn't do that. In his old publications, what I'm reading from right here, I'm going to give you an example of York's sophistry. And this is taken from Tabernacle of the Most High on page 94. All right, here's one. Here's a good one. Yeah. All right.
Hey, love me,
Reading from the book. York says, I have spoon-fed you all the knowledge. You maintain yourselves. You have to forgive me. York's, whoever's editing these books in punctuation was never great. So, I have spoon-fed you all the knowledge you maintain yourselves by today. I have been your father, brother, friend, teacher, and guide, and have sent you no harm in any way. Have I? Exclamation points. 1, 2, 3.
Multitasking.
Right? That's a very interesting sentence that York puts together. He states that he has fed from you all the knowledge you maintain yourself by today, and I have been your father, brother, son, friend, teacher, guide, and God, and have sent no harm to you in any way. Have I? Now, when this book comes out, York is hiding the fact that he's molesting the young girls in the community. York is hiding behind that he's taking advantage of brothers and sisters. York is hiding behind the 1993 FBI investigation of welfare fraud in the community. York is hiding behind all of those things, right? In order to project himself, to make himself look like he is this up and up guy, teacher, father figure, this, that, and the other. Yeah, he's a father, all right. He's a father of over 200 children. None of them given their respect and their right as a child.
Over 200 children, family. One man, over 200
no
children.
No disrespect to any of the offsprings of York, the children that York has had. None of them have been given their due respect, due right as a child, as York. And so York hides behind that claim right there, right? And then you have on page 65 also. York makes a claim about how can you man, the writing is so bad. How can you have how can you have a physical thing in your heart? Right, this is a chapter in which York talks about having denouncing other Muslims within the Northeast community when they do not agree with York's teaching about wearing white, looking a certain way, living in the community, blah, 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 blah. Or those Muslims who may not be practicing to the best of their ability or practicing how they like. And York is criticizing them about how can you have a physical thing in your heart, meaning belief. Yet York does the same thing on his exit from Islam, meaning that Islam is in our heart. We have to leave. The Muslim world is getting too hostile. So we need to leave. So we're going to leave all the bad things and we're going to keep Islam, peace in our heart. Peace in our heart. Mind you, while all these things are going on, York is behind the scene, conducting himself completely contrary to what he prints and writes up. Prints and writes up. The only person York is literally trying to satisfy is himself throughout all of his writings and publications. It's all sophistry. York will put some truths or truthful quotations from other books, writings, or individuals, but they're all for the purpose of himself. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, it's no problem. We had a question or three in the chat. It said, who is the current leader of the Nuwaubian nation, and is Prince York capable of leading the nation, in your opinion?
That's a good one. In this book right here, the Constitution of the Nuwaubians, right? And this is sort of off topic, but I'm gonna bring it back, right? I'll entertain this and bring it back. There is no current leader. There is no current leader of the Nuwaubian nation, subgroups. There is no unification of them. Now, in this book, York writes that after him there will be caliphs. After him there will be caliphs. Caliphs is an Arabic word for rulership or successor, one that comes after him. All right? York writes that in there. Currently, there is no bona fide, I'm the man of this whole thing in the Nuwaubian community. Whether it's Nuwaubians with a P, Nuwaubians with a B, whether we're talking about proto-Nuwaubians, crypto-Nuwaubians, neuter Nuwaubians, these are all prefixes or subgroups of Nuwaubians that I create in order to keep them distinct. Because currently the Nuwaubian organization are, to my count, in about 13 separate groups. None of them agreeing with one another. Tribal wars. Prince York? No. Do I think he'd be able to head this and actually bring this thing back around? No, I don't. I don't. My personal feelings, I don't. Do I think that they will ever go away? No, they won't. No, they won't. But York started off as a pariah within the Black urban community, even within the Muslim community, right? He was a pariah, and hopefully he'll stay that way. No one have to worry about him. Next question.
Okay, the next question was, the holy tablets at one point were being sold for over $1,000. Now the lowest price is around $250. Is it worth that price in your opinion, and do you have a copy?
Where you get these questions from? All right, I'll entertain them. Yes, I have copies of the holy tablets. I have 2 or 3 copies. I actually collect them. I collect them in order to take them out of circulation. And at the same time that I do that, it also drives up the market value. So if there is someone who is interested in gaining York's books for the sake of historical record, or combating some of the foolishness and pseudoscience and cultural vultures that are Nubians, that's up to you. That's the decision in which you have to make. Like I say, I'm doing my part, and unfortunately, I'm driving up the market value on them. But they are becoming, they are less expensive than they were at one point in time. The books themselves aren't worth anything at all, other than, maybe starting a barbecue. The books themselves aren't worth anything. Straight trash, hot garbage.
Hot garbage.
But by reading them, you'll gain some insight and maybe save someone from joining a cult. Because I have to say, York is probably one of the most sophisticated cult organizations, sophisticated and complex organizations that I have come across and read about. Now, York isn't the first one to use Islam and create a cult. As a matter of fact, there's a white woman in the late 80s who used Islam and went on a killing spree. She took and created a cult, and her and her husband went on a killing spree. I'll provide the actual info on her name. You can look it up. So there's nothing really unique to York and his publications other than the complexity that he went to in order to keep himself relevant, keep the people busy.
Hey, Tico.
To get rich, to constantly start, Nubians talk about unity and this and that, but York love to be in the middle of fitna. I'm sorry. York love to be in the middle of, trying to think of a way to translate fitna. Confusion. He loved to be, he loved to be in the middle of confusion, and York was very messy, all the time. Messy. York was messy in Islam. He was messy as Nubian Hebrews. He was messy as Nubian Hebrews. He was messy as Nubian Moors. He was messy even in his own trial. So I can go through each example through each one. Tonight's topic is about how messy York. We ought to call him Messy York. Messy White. Instead of Messy Mike, we call him Messy White. But this book right here that I brought up, where it talks about the Constitution of the United Nubian Nation of Moors, York was messy in this too, right? Because at one point in time, York tried to acquiesce, basically Debo, another Moorish group based in Louisiana, by the Empress. I can't pronounce her name, but it's Versatize, I believe. I know I'm mispronouncing the name, so forgive me. But basically, they're a group down, they're a sovereign Moor group down in Louisiana. So York
Hot trash York
tries to
early.
acquiesce, basically devo the group, right? And try to link up with them. But the Empress, the woman who was actually the head of it, the Empress wasn't having it. And after a brief courtship between them, they cut it off. But during that courtship, York went out and began to print publications using the other organizations' indigenous status file docket. I mean, before the wedding was over with, between them two groups, they had a divorce. But that didn't stop York. He quickly went into hustle mode, getting books out, writing, talking about how his community, how his lineage and his history of his people go all the way back to Louisiana, goes all the way back to the Empress, and yada yada yada. But once the Empress cut ties, York then had to cut all that doctrine off, change the name of the group, and then in 1998, file paperwork, a docket, which is basically a docket. There is no actual recognition of indigenous status, but just simply some paperwork, which it was filed in 1998. And so now York has the other group's docket, file docket on his paperwork, and now he has to add the 1998 docket information on there. And so York is just messy all the way around, even up to his court date. York doesn't know whether or not he wants to be from here or from someplace else. York doesn't know whether or not he wants to. But Chuck covered all that. I won't get into the trial. I promise I won't get into the trial tonight.
Okay. They say, is Nubic just Arabic with the vowels changed?
Yes. Nubic is nothing more than chopped and screwed Arabic. That's all it is. Chopped and screwed. So you take Arabic and actually Nubic uses Arabic vowels in conjugation. So basically what happened, this is after Sheikh Dawood dies, and the community now, York is now going into its own now. It's really leaving normative Islam or Orthodox Islam. York is pushing Arabic and for the people to speak Arabic. And he brings in some Arabic teachers, but eventually all that stops. And so now the young children are beginning to chop and screw the Arabic language so that they may understand one another, in order to fill the gaps in the lessons in which they don't have, such things as how do you make a word plural, or show possession, or feminine and masculine. So the children begin to speak this sort of English, French, Arabic amongst themselves, and York picks it up. But the actual language Nubic is nothing more than Arabic with new fonts, with different fonts, with Arabic vowels. Some of the points in York's doctrine that he begins to teach concerning the definite articles in Arabic, al and el, and how they're conjugated in Arabic with the preceding noun. I won't get into it too deeply, but you would not say al-Rahman, you would say ar-Rahman, ar-Rahim, ash-Shaitan, or ashhadu, such words like that. Even though the definite article changes in its pronunciation. Well, York stuck to it, and sticking to the al and el definite article, York put that in Nubic. So within Nubic, you'll see some slight variances in some of the grammatical rules, but it's nothing more than Arabic. Really don't. It's nothing more than chopped and screwed Arabic. As a matter of fact, I tell you, those people who were in the community before this Nubic came out that learned Arabic or was exposed to Arabic, we didn't go to no Nubic classes. We didn't learn Nubic, not at all. So we looked at it and was like, man, I'm not going to waste my time in this class. It's a waste of time. Don't nobody speak but the kids. The only ones, learning it is the new people coming in. And man, I got this quota. These quotas keep coming up, keep going up. Man, I got to get out here and get this money. I am not going to waste my time with this Nubic. Quota done went from $50 to $75. I'm trying to see my mate. I ain't even seen my kids. Come on, man, I need some deodorant. I'm out here in the streets, and I ain't got time for Nubic classes. And that's really how we felt about it. We didn't care nothing about it. And then Nubic, huh?
I can understand that.
Yeah. And that's how, not just me, but that's how many of us felt. It was a waste of time. It was a waste of time. And that's when you had a lot of the old soldiers in the community begin to fall off. And this is also during the decline. It's part of the decline of York community. I'll show you an example of Nubic. All right. So on this page,
right,
good. Right. This page is Arabic. Right. Al Injil. All right. This is what it says in here. Al Injil. So, and over here, this is a revised edition of this book. Right. This is a revised edition. Well, you can see where Nubic begins to come in, and when this book is actually published, this book comes in a little bit later. I'm sorry if y'all can't see it, but this photo right here originally had around written in it in Arabic motif around it. In this book, it is written in Nubic. This is definitely Nubic. And you guys see that well enough. Whoops. All right. That is Nubic. That is Nubic.
Somebody come through the door rapping like polite.
All right. Very angular.
You already know what time it is.
In this particular script right here, York has the vowels put in place. Okay? Those are the smaller lines that you see above the letters and the letters themselves. York has. Yes?
I didn't say anything.
No, I don't mean. I know I'm cutting your wisdom, but there's something very important because you bring up the vowels.
Yeah.
That Dr. Cork would always love to use. One of the things that Dr. Cork would like to say is, for example, when you look at that Nubic writing, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you have any understanding somewhere of Arabic, for example,
look, they started out.
That, you can see that
York brought Arabic teachers in for the kids, but he stopped after a certain point. So the kids just kind of made it into like a Arabic pig Latin, and York slapped the name Nuwapian on it. York lied like he breathed.
Is being spelled in that Nubic, right? You see the Alice, you see Cliff is A, you see the lamb, which is the 12. Lamb, L, Alice, A, Ha, H. You see it, right? And you see like these things, they're called like damas, right? They're the vowel sounds.
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Cork, one of his weak arguments that he would use in saying that the Quran is not an authentic book. It's like this: if you're going to say that the Quran is not an authentic book, at least have a very good argument. All right. Now, his argument in the language itself, because the language itself in the Quran, in the Muslim world, is the thing that the Muslim views the Quran as a miracle within itself because of the self-preservation of the Fusha Arabic, classical Arabic, that has not changed. Meaning that if you went to any Muslim on the 7 continents of this planet, every Muslim is going to recite the same Quran. If you went to every Christian on the planet, or anybody who reads the Bible,
you have to think about it. A lot of these people were young. Farouk was still in high school. Chuck was just going to college. Martin Lamont Hill quit college to join the New Wapians. They was kids.
Because the Bible is not going to recite the same Bible. For example, if you have a King James Bible and you read John chapter 1, verse 1, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God. If you read a Jehovah's Witness New World Translation Bible, John chapter 1, verse 1 is altered and changed by one letter, and it's the letter A, because it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was a God. Now, what Dr. Clark is saying about the vowels, he's saying that there was no vowels in the Fusha Arabic, in the Fusha Arabic, in the Quranic Arabic. Now, for somebody who supposedly is the descendant of the Makkis from Sudan, and Sudanese people to this day, they speak very, very, very well Arabic. One of the best people you can learn Arabic from is a Sudanese person. They have very impeccable Arabic, Quranic Arabic. The vowels are in place of the letters because a person that does not speak Arabic indigenously needs the vowels. You need to know what letter to stress, how it will be pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
And so
that is love me from
speaking Arabic indigenously does not need the vowels. Here's my proof in the pudding. If you go and if you look at the word Lehigh, like in Pennsylvania, there's the Lehigh Valley. When you look at that word, it's not spelled Leehigh. It's spelled Leigh. But because you have an understanding of how English operates, and you understand I before E, and in certain situations for words, E is before I, because you have that knowledge of the English language, you understand that word is Lehigh. To someone that's not speaking English as an indigenous language, they're not going to know that. They're going to be confused as to why it's spelled that way when it's not pronounced that, or why is it pronounced that way when it's not spelled that way.
Yeah.
So that is an argument that he would use, which is a very weak argument. And so if you're somebody that's never studied Arabic and you come across his writings and you're like, wow, I have seen a Quran, and there are Qurans.
I don't exactly know.
Now, just somebody that has studied Arabic very well, and you have excelled in the language, and you're not somebody that indigenously does not speak Arabic, then of course you don't need to read Arabic with vowels.
I would say maybe his 40s.
On the other hand, you will.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. It's a weak argument because you can go to the Arabic-speaking world and just buy a newspaper, or just look at a billboard. They don't use vowels in the posters or in the newspaper. They don't use them. If you speak Arabic, you don't need the vowels. And the only reason why the vowels were set in place or even used, right, is for non-speakers. That's simply it. Now, York speaks about how it didn't, Arabic Fusha did not have vowels in it. Now, this too is a fallacy. Excuse me. This too is a fallacy. Anyone can go search up, and I call up Nawabians or anyone, right? There is no such thing as a vowel-less language. There is no such thing. There is no such thing as a vowel-less languages. All languages have vowels in them. Right. Now, whether or not they are phonetically written out in the script is one thing, but the language itself has vowels in it. And that even comes up in our times, our contemporary times nowadays, just like the previous question that someone wanted to ask, do I believe that the metanetter has been translated? Well, that question in itself is based upon the metanetter does not have vowels in it. It does not have vowels. So how to actually pronounce it from its writing is difficult, right? The actual pronunciation. But from what is written, a general, and some will say a thorough understanding of what is being conveyed can be understood, right? And it's the same thing with Arabic or the Quran. The only difference between the Quran Arabic and the metanetter, right, is that the metanetter, right, has a broken chain of transmission. What it actually means, spiritually or literally, the chain has been broken. The priesthood has a broken chain of link in it. Whereas in the Quran, right, the chain of transmission, down, from one to the other, has remained intact. So what the phonetics of the Quran and how to pronounce it is known, is readily known. York just simply used that as a scheme to sell his own Quran, to sell more books and to keep people busy. Go ahead, Malik. Go ahead. Oh, okay. I guess he muted his mic.
The thing that cause see, somebody had asked in the room earlier about what's this whole thing about risk, like is rich mentioned in the Quran, and see the thing is, I'm like I said, my Arabic is very rusty, and I'm not even gonna play myself.
True, Don.
If I speak Arabic, I sound like a 4-year-old. You know, like reading, like I'm real slow with it. You know,
that's why it's good that we get these on wax and we can pull them up.
And, you know,
because how many times can you say the same thing?
Tafsir. I would have to go to the meaning of these verses. And so I'm saying that to say that, for example, two things I want to mention is this. Tafsir. What is tafsir? Tafsir is the meaning to the verses of the Quran. Just like there's tafsir to the hadiths. You look at somebody like Dr. Ford. He's rejected the hadiths. So by rejecting the hadiths, him claiming that the Quran was the word of God, by rejecting the sunnah, he has rejected the speech of Allah. And by rejecting the speech of Allah, you rejected the sunnah. Now, what is the proof in that? There are many verses in the Quran that says, obey Allah and His Messenger. Well, how do you obey Allah?
I'll quote them for you if you want. Go ahead.
How do you obey His Messenger?
Yeah.
The Sunnah. Because the Sunnah is the application of the Quran. Now, there's another verse that says, obey Allah and His Messenger and those in authority above you. Who is those in authority? That's talking about the ulama. That's talking about the scholars of the past and present. Well, why would as a rhetorical question, why would the ulama be of importance in knowing anything about the Quran and knowing anything about the Hadith? Because one, the Sahaba themselves, the companions of the Prophet, were Hafiz, meaning they memorized the Quran like Muhammad. That's first of all. They themselves were scholars of the Quran. And there are those certain Sahabas, like Imam Malik, Imam Hadith, who were actual Sahabas and companions of the Prophet, and Imam Malik, Imam Hadith.
I am, and I hope you are too, Tomas.
Imam Hanbali, is known as the four imams, and they are known as madhabs. They are known as the four schools of thought. When what they did was they explained the hadiths, they explained how things were done, and there were times that the prophet may have done things.
Okay, so what we're gonna do? Let me pause this.
And it doesn't,
because the relevant part of this about York has pretty much already been explained, and then they going into the intricacies of Arabic and the Quran. But we are gonna close out here in a minute or two when Remy goes live. But one more time, let's get a round of applause for Nequa B, number 2 on the global soul charts.
Yeah.
For those of y'all who didn't already know, I'm gonna tell you now.
Can we meet?
I'll be back later today with some more.
Can I peek at all the loveliness you have?
Yeah, for now.
Your streets, eyes to eyes, souls into souls, undercover priceless, daylight, cold, making differences, sharing luminaries, playing visionary, black solution, military, let's be extraordinary, walking down from repetition, equals you, equals no division, admiring your mind, your talent, your frame, your condition, exchange your love with tradition, light me up, fireplace, harmonies, Merry Christmas. My holiday heart, my piano. This choir outgoes the piano. My vinyl record happening sound on the ground. Ah, la la la. Speaking first perception, your perception.
Okay, ready live.
Like 50 and dress on.
And here goes the link.
The mac and cheese, my pound cake in the squeeze. Can we? But can we meet? Can we speak? Can I peek at all the loveliness you have this week?
Thank you, Bernice. Peace to you. We'll be reconvening at Remy's. This is TripCTreehouse, where always sway.